Someone who believes that perfection is the enemy to success.
Someone who believes in breaking the stereotypes.
Someone who says that people who have achieved well in life are the ones who have broken the mold.
And so did she.
From knowing multiple languages to the art of voice modulation and giving proxies to 15 friends in 10 different voices.
The one who started her journey in 2011 as reporter and anchor and had fiercely covered crime, politics, and environment that had won her national acclaim.
Winning the award for Best Anchor Digital by ENBA, certificate for Best Online Anchor by World Record Publishing Company UK, and certificate for Rising Star 2022 by India Today Group.
These are not just her achievement but her unwavering commitment towards making a difference that sets her apart. Her journey is nothing short of extraordinary. Her relentless pursuit through truth and excellence have inspired countless individuals to strive for greatness.
My dear friends, today we are honored to welcome a trailblazer in the world of journalism, someone who exemplifies the courage and resilience encapsulated in words only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly. Please welcome Nabila Jamal.
Thank you. That was such a lovely introduction.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We are truly privileged to have you here
So am
today.
I. Thank you.
So, ma'am, during our research, we came across this thing that you were in childhood. You were notorious, rebellious, not so
I still
not so academic kind of a child.
Yeah.
Cut to today, here we are. You are an inspiration for millions of aspiring journalists like us. So, how would you describe this journey over these years?
I think I stuck to my core self. I still am notorious. I still am brash. I still am loud. I still am naughty. And I still am a risk taker. And to be honest, all of that worked very well for me as a journalist, because I think as a journalist you got to be fearless. You got to be taking risks. And I wouldn't say that notoriety is a great thing for a journalist, but certainly the fact that I would talk so much, I would be quite a troublesome kid as a kid in class, all the time yapping away. All of that has come to actually help me professionally, because in my profession you need to talk a lot.
Yes.
And you need to ad lib a lot. I know what it means to ad lib, right?
Yeah.
You've been given a story. You're rolling on live coverage. You constantly need to explain and elaborate and contextualize the news that you're presenting. So I think that talking a lot kind of helped me in a way with my profession. So I used all my whys, my negative areas to become my positives in my profession.
Okay,
And,
so
and I've been very street smart. I may have not been great academically, but I've been a go-getter. You give me tasks on the ground. I'm great at doing that, and I've always been so. Even as a kid, my parents always said that anything outside classroom you were good at.
Okay.
So
Breaking the mold.
that has helped me professionally.
okay, and adding to that, ma'am, like apart from academics, we came to know that you were good at horse riding. Even you won the state level championship in karate.
Yes.
So how was that experience?
Yeah. And you rode the fastest horse in your academy, the
Yeah,
Asian Goddess.
where you heard all of this? That's
We follow
nice
you then.
research.
Yeah.
Yes, I was a horse rider and I did it for almost 2 years. I almost got into the junior level championship, but I had to give that up because examinations came, and sometimes parents don't think that that's the right profession or the right time to pursue it. So because of my 12th exams, I had to drop off. I was really good at it.
Yes.
And karate, I was a state level champ.
Yeah.
I won the state championship when I was 8 years old though. So but I didn't pursue it. I just helped me have strong bones.
Yeah.
And I can give a nice knock to someone. I think I haven't tried, but I think I have strong bones thanks to karate as a kid. But yeah, otherwise I wasn't a great sports person. Otherwise,
Okay.
karate and badminton a bit that I played, and horse riding.
Okay.
I suck at swimming. And my hand-eye coordination is the worst, so I can't actually. Badminton was still okay, but tennis and all, was horrible at.
Okay.
So you were good at like other skills apart from academics, and
Yeah.
also you used to mimic in your
Ah.
classes
I
during your
still do.
school time. So how was that?
I still do. I still have friends wanting me to mimic some people in the group because I love doing that. Yeah, I'm very goofy like that. I can imitate a lot of people if I observe them for some time.
So, was this thing always in your mind? You this career you have envisioned for like journalism is your thing to do.
Yeah, I think by the time I was in high school, I felt that if there was any profession that suited me the best, it was journalism. Though at some point, for the amount of mimicry I did, my parents thought that maybe they would have never allowed me to explore acting in films and such. And that was not even on my mind. But I used to imitate so many film stars and act like all these actors all the time that some in my family could have thought that she may have taken up something to do with acting, but that never happened because I always was fascinated by a woman with a reporter's mic. That really fascinated me for the fact that she could speak her mind and she could speak about what's happening around her and explain and have an impact, a better impact, make a difference. That really motivated me to be a journalist. And ever since, I think high school is when I realized that that's what I wanted to be, and I went in that direction. I took up my master's in mass communication. I did my I did economic sociology, political science. I took subjects in that field. But never took anything very seriously. Like it was not like my life depends on it. I took life as it came, and I just did everything very sincerely.
Okay.
Okay,
No
so-
kaam chori.
Okay, that has to be.
Yeah.
So also, ma'am, like being a notorious child and then entering to a different world, the media industry, where we see that reading and writing are the key skills.
Yeah.
So how do you see that? Because you were not into academics completely. Then how did you develop these skills and how did you manage in this profession while doing journalism, anchoring, reporting? Because it needs a lot of knowledge and everything. So how did you cope up with
See,
it?
knowledge doesn't mean I need to be great at reading and writing. Well, that is of course an important core area of learning. But I wasn't great at reading or writing. I wasn't an avid reader, and it was not like I would write beautiful articles. But I think my strength was talking. I could talk, and like I said, I was so talkative that I think I started exploring that side of me. And my parents also, at the age of 5, I remember giving speeches in school where she would make me talk like a politician, like mimic the speech that Indira Gandhi had given back in the 80s, that kind of stuff. So I've done all sorts of speech mimicry. So I think that helped, and I would watch a lot of news reporters speaking. So I learned a lot of what I learned by watching and listening rather than reading and writing.
Okay.
So I know it may not be the quintessential way of becoming a journalist, because journalists are supposed to be writing well and reading lots of books.
Right.
That was just never me, but I still have come along well, I think.
So you are a great orator.
Exactly.
I think
Yes.
I don't know if I'm a great orator, but I think that's definitely my better strength than reading, writing. But nonetheless, I think now I've come to realize that reading is important. So now, finally, when I'm thick into the business and the industry and the profession, I've now started to make it make a conscious effort now to actually read some books and read some parts of history and a little bit of research articles. I do that now because I know it will help my profession and I want to better myself. So
Maybe this must be the destiny, because like I came across this thing when I was researching.
Yeah.
Like your parents had an education institution.
yeah, we still run schools.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then now you have indulged into reading.
Yeah,
and
I'd
writing.
imagine they run schools and I was still not a very good student. So for my mother, it was the most embarrassing thing to actually tell her teachers that this is a percentage she got in her school. And she very consciously kept me away from our school. Like we have 1 to 12. And and my parents did not want me to study in their school because I was so naughty. There was a time when the B or the block education officer who came, they usually come to inspect, right? So they came to the school, and I remember usually what happens is the principal or my mom was the principal, and she gets up and they come and take her chair. They'll sit on her chair. So it's just how it works sometimes. So when he came and sat on her chair, I barged in. I was doing my pre-KG in my mom's school. So I barged him and I said, "You should get up right now. That's my mother's chair," and all of that. So they were so worried that he might say something because he was the block education officer. So they realized that year that I'm not going to be in their school. I have to be in another school, and they put me in another school. And yeah, like I said, I wasn't the best student, very average student. And they were very embarrassed to say, share my marks with the teachers. My sister, who's 8 years younger than me, she's a rank holder. So they always, they always would be very proud talking about my sister's marks. But Farah is my pet name. Farah is fine, but Ria did, Ria got the second rank. She's topped the class or first rank. So they would always talk about my sister's marks more and never about mine. I remember in 10th grade, my mom said, "Just pass. All you can do for me, and that one favor that you can do for me is just pass." I managed with a 60-something%, but yeah, that's how bad it was. Funnily, over the years, like in college and then my masters subsequently, I did far better. Like I was in my 70s, 80s at that point. But schooling, I was just completely haphazard. Yeah.
Okay. So and then ma'am, from that time and facing the camera for the first time, because you always wanted to be in front of the camera, speaking and all. So how did it feel when you came for the first time on television? How did your family react to it, and what was their reaction? Okay, now she's doing what she she always wanted to do.
How did I react to it? I felt like I was born to do it.
Okay.
I just feel I'm a natural. I never felt I had to put on something. I think that's my personality in general, that I generally stick to my true side of myself. I never give out a person that's not me. I'm not artificial, even off camera or on camera. So I always tell myself whenever I'm doing my story as well, I give one bit of my heart to the story, because then that my true personality and my true opinion comes out. So I think that's worked very well for me. And for my family, they always knew that she's naughty. She will, you put her in front of the camera and she will just. So they were happy, and I think they knew that this is what I always wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I never found it difficult at all, right from the word go. I'm a very, I think I'm very friendly with the camera.
You own the camera now. And looking at this media landscape of today, which is dominated by politics and like hardcore politics, crime, you won an award for your environment story, that Bangalore Lake Reservation story.
Yeah.
So how does that, can you put some light on it?
Oh well, that award landed me a job with India Today, because I think that's where KP saw me, and they offered me to join India Today at that point. So definitely a memorable one. So yeah, that lake was frothing, Bellandur Lake. I mean, I wouldn't say that my report changed the way it was, because much after that award, many years, situation just worsened, and by then I moved out of that channel. I joined India Today. So we've been doing follow-up stories, but I can't really own that story entirely. But I think the way I presented it, I was on the ground, I spoke to the people locally, we spoke about the composition of chemicals in that water, on how it actually affects daily life on people who are, drinking treated water from the same area, which actually comes from that stream. So in that sense, it was just so hazardous, and the kind of health complications that locals were developing. So we went in depth in that story at that point. Thankfully, there were many reporters like me. I wasn't the only one. So many reporters who did stories and follow-up stories, and now thankfully we don't see that frothing happening there. So it's had an impact, but I'd say collective effort, not mine alone.
Okay. Yeah. So also, ma'am, throughout your journey and everything, so was there any pivotal moment that turned Nabila Jamal into journalist
Nabila Jamal?
Is there any story, any anecdote that you still feel, okay, that's it, that I have done something sort of that?
I think that if you've done your research, you may have come across my mining story.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think that was my breakthrough watershed moment. Is that what you call it? That definitely was my moment of glory, I would say, because what happened at that point, and I still remember lots of people telling me, don't do that story because that you have mining goons and gundas usually located there. But as journalists, we are forced to look for a story every day.
Yes, yes.
So that day, I'm like, this is what we do. We go to office and we're like, what to do today?
Yeah.
So I was thinking, what to do today? And we thought, and every day we have to file a story now. That's we are pressured. Now I'm good at delivering no matter what. Against all odds, I will deliver what I'm asked to. So I thought, okay, nothing doing. Let's do this. Let's go to Bannerghatta National Park area. There's mining happening there. I've always been thinking of going there, but they're like, it's risky. Think twice. I said, no, what risky? Let's go see. If it doesn't happen, and we'll come back.
Yeah.
So it's more of that.
Okay.
I had that will that I want to at least go see. So we went. And nobody was there. I was like, wow, nobody is there. People are scared to come and cover it.
Yes.
Why? When nobody is there. But what we saw there was insane. They had really dug out such huge parts of land, and this was exactly right next to the Bannerghatta National Park, where you have scores of animals, right? You have animals parked in the park, and you have mining happening right at the periphery of the park. Just imagine in the night, when animals are ideally supposed to rest or whatever, animals are, they're scared of any kind of sound. Imagine mining, where the earth movers are being used to shake the ground to, in fact, cave into the rocks right next to the park. We can't handle one little drill. Drilling in the on your wall. If you have a drill, you can't handle it. It's so screechy. Imagine for the animals, you have earth movers actually caving into that rock which is right next to them. The park is here. You have the periphery where the barricading of the park, and right next to that, I'm telling you, literally right next to that, maybe where your principal sits. Literally that's not even that far. So it was just sad to know that the government probably knew about it or didn't know, pretended not to know. Of course, pretended not to know. How can nobody know, right? I knew it. The journalist fraternity knew about it.
Yes.
Just nobody had the courage to do it.
Right.
And you
So
broke
I
that.
just did it very innocently.
Yeah.
It was not like I wanted to win an award for it or anything, and I did win an award for it. Funnily, I should have. But I went and I shot it. I still remember that I was dying to go to the toilet, and I had nowhere to go because we shot everything. Okay, we shot the kind of the digging that happened and all of that we shot, and then I told my camera person, listen. We finished. I really want to pee. I'm going to go to that rock there and pee because in case we get caught by anyone while going out, I don't want to pee in my pants. I swear, this is exactly what I told him. And I went to the rock to the side. I actually peed on the rock on the corner, and then I walked out and we are stepping down, and we have 5 goons there waiting for us with masks and and like a stick of sort with a car, one Scorpio and 2 bikes and all of that, and they're like, give us your camera. And I said, no way, we can't. And by then we kind of rushed into my car, and then we shut the door. They started banging at the door so hard, they crashed into one of the windows. Basically, they wanted us to give the camera, so we delete the footage, right?
Yes.
And I wasn't willing to do it. I don't know what courage that took over me. I just said, no, I'm going to call the police right now. I fought with them. I'm calling the police right now. He said, do what you want, you try. So clearly these people knew that there's no network. I did not even realize my phone, I carry 2 phones, you must have seen.
Yeah.
I carry
Yes,
2
yes.
phones. Both my phones have 0 network. Zero network. How can you have 0 network? And how can I not have seen it? I was foolish. Obviously, I didn't factor in the risks. But I kept trying to call. I kept trying to call office, and these guys kept hammering at the window by then. They were basically trying to crack open the window. They kept hammering, and my camera person is obviously freaking out. He's like, I'll just give the camera to them. I said, just don't give it. And I, from another phone, kind of very secretly tried to record the way they were attacking our car, right? And I don't know, to my good luck, whatever luck, I got through my colleague at office, and I said, listen, we're being attacked by these mining guys, and they're crashing into our window, and no network here. I don't know what to do. So he said, okay, just hang in right there. I'm calling the police. So he called the police, DCP South, and the DCP immediately sent a vehicle. And why did they send a vehicle immediately? Because it's a journalist who's stuck. If it was a commoner,
Yes.
which I'm assuming must have happened many times.
Correct.
Many times that a commoner must have tried to expose them because they are fed up, right? they must have shooed them away like this, threatening them. But the cops came, and I just held on in the car. I just told him, don't delete the footage as much as we could. But my camera person was so scared, he gave way. Like he freaked out and he deleted. He said, I can't. You would take your risk. I can't. And he deleted it. He deleted that footage, all that footage that we took, because he was scared that they'll attack him. By then the cops came, and it took 40 minutes for the cop to arrive. How can it take 40 minutes? Anyway, it took 40 minutes. I think the cops also kind of
Yes.
took their own time. 40 minutes and the cops arrived, and finally they shoot them away. And even before the cops could reach us, these people have already, I think, been intimidated by someone that the cops are coming. I think a word has gone out, and they left before the cops arrived. Suddenly they left. And the cops came and they guided us out, and thankfully I had taken footage on my phone. Like I had clicked it on my own, right? Like I had taken all the mining that was happening there on my phone, images, and the way they had attacked me, I had recorded it on my other phone on the side. So I had all that footage, and my boss at that point was very supportive. So he said, no, you've got to go all out with the story and put it like, let's do prime time, let's do all shows. So we went very big on that story. The Karnataka government at that point formed an SIT team, a special investigative team. All the mining barons in that belt lost their licenses, and even till today, that case is on where they basically attacked me. I filed a complaint. They took me to the police station. The police station wasn't agreeing to even take my complaint because they were all in cahoots. The miners and the cops, local cops, they were not taking my complaint. So then when the DCP and all got involved and the SIT was formed and they took my complaint, it's now a legal case. In fact, I just appeared before the Karnataka High Court maybe 2 weeks ago on the same case where they wanted me to quash the case and say that they didn't attack me, but I don't want to withdraw it. They tried to pay you off. They tried to pay me off also, but that never happened. I mean, I never agreed to it. Because if it happens so easy, then what's the point, right?
Yes,
When
yes.
you have the government forming an SIT, that investigation is on, not concluded. Imagine if it had to conclude and if they had to really get to the bottom of it, they would have.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They SIT namesake.
Okay.
But my only satisfaction is that they lost their license. They couldn't mine in that area anymore. Now I don't know if there are other miners who have come up in the same place. I didn't go back to check. I'm too scared now. But I think that really made me feel like my profession had an impact. If you do it right, you can really change the course of things. There's a lot of power in what you do as a journalist. Yeah.
Also, it takes a lot of courage
Courage,
because
yeah.
as you mentioned, the cameraman with you, he was
He deleted the footage.
Yeah.
like it's dreadful. The situation is really dreadful,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you hold
And
that.
I won't hold it against him, yeah, poor guy, because they were
Yes.
attacking him. I'm a girl, no, so they were not hitting my window. They were hitting his window, and they were abusing him and hitting his window. And they're wearing masks very smartly. So they tried to pull the camera, and they then he deleted it. He said, "See, I'm not giving you the camera, but I'm deleting it. So yeah, he deleted it. But I had whatever I had on my phone. But the guys got arrested. Those 3 guys who attacked. And yeah, that's that. So SIT team was formed. They lost licenses. That was my big takeaway. I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so also ma'am, as we know that you are a polyglot, and I think the next question is more of related to the situation that you have just told us. So we have like 1 or 2 dialogues, and we are gonna tell you those dialogues, and if you can, then please translate them into a few languages that you know.
Oh my
So
God.
the first dialogue is थप्पड़ से डर नहीं लगता साहब जर्नलिस्ट से लगता है, which goes
Perfectly with you.
yeah, with the anecdote that you told us.
Oh my God, this I hope you're going to publish this anywhere. थप्पड़ से नहीं डर लगता, जर्नलिस्ट से डर लगता है. नानो what do you say for scared? ನಾನು ಓದೇಯಿಂದ ಭಯಪಡಲ್ಲ ಸರ್, ನಾನು ಪತ್ರಕಾರದಿಂದ ಭಯಪಡ್ತೀನಿ. Oh my God, I think this is the closest you can get in
okay,
Kannada.
got it.
What do you say slap in Malayalam? Shit, this is too much of
Okay, no
a
problem.
translation. No, I can't do it.
Okay,
Kannada
no.
is one.
That's not a
Yeah,
problem.
Malayalam is very
No
difficult.
issues.
You know, it's a very colloquial way of
Yeah,
saying
yes,
it. I don't
yes,
know. Mottika adika ange podi illa. Vasha ange patakara podiya. That doesn't sound right. It's totally wrong. It's literal translation, but that's not how they speak. It's my version. Yeah.
It has to be colloquial.
Yes.
No problem.
No issues, ma'am. So, ma'am, we like in the intro we mentioned this thing that you gave proxies to 15 of
Oh,
your
God.
friends in 10 different voices,
Ah.
which we refer to as art of voice modulation.
Huh.
So, how does that help in journalism? And secondly, what are the tips that you would give to the aspiring journalist for this
Voice
acing this
modulation.
art of voice modulation?
I think the drawback with a lot of voiceover artists, I mean, you can't be a voiceover artist if you're not able to modulate. So the only way you can make your voice interesting is for you to have some level of modulation. And I think that came with a lot of mimicry that I did in school.
Yes,
right?
yes,
I
yes.
told you I used to imitate people so
Yeah.
much. So that comes with that. I think I don't know if if it's something you can learn. I think you can learn it, but it's also a trait you could be born with. I
Yeah.
feel mimicry and things like that. Not everybody has it
Yes,
to
yes,
to
yes.
mimic.
Correct.
I don't know if you
Yes.
can hone that mimicry skill.
Yes.
I used to do it from the time I was a kid, right? Or maybe you can. I don't know. I could be wrong, but yeah, I think modulation is key. And you want to hear that story of how I used to give proxies?
It would be great.
I
if you
had
share.
so many. I had almost 10 friends in class in college, my degree, who used to text me and say, "Please." Imagine boys used to text me and say, "Please give me proxy today. Please give me proxy today." So I used to do boys' voices, like timid voice, a loud voice, a soft voice, girl, boy, both. I used to give all sorts of voices to give a proxy. Obviously, the teacher didn't know whose voice was who, so that was a saving grace. But yeah, I used to do all sorts of things. See, I tell you what, voiceover, even when I do voiceovers and scripts, I make it a point to modulate, because a person while watching a story wants to feel the story the way you're saying it. When you say it with feeling, and feeling comes when you modulate, you can't just be deadpan. I can't read one sentence with a flat tone
Right.
and expect you to engage with me.
Yes.
I've got to show surprise. I've got to show shock. I've got to act pleasant when there's something pleasant written. So that mood while reading a story and narrating it, helps you capture an audience. So if you're, especially when it's text based and you're reading out something, there has to be modulation, and that can be learned. That can be learned, because I've taught many of them on voice. I mean, many media students on voice modulation, on where to show surprise, where to show what to enunciate,
Yeah.
what to stress on, some words that you need to specifically stress on, because that's where the emotion lies in that word. Those kind of things. And it's not difficult to learn that.
Okay.
Over time, it's a very quick thing you can learn, and it's very important if you want to be a reporter or an anchor.
Right, ma'am. So, so far we have talked about writing skills, reading, and then voice modulation. So, you have been a part of ITMI for so long. So, how do you see the academic process at ITMI that helps children to, compete in this media world? How do you see?
I think the fact that I'm here is the biggest USP, right? It's not just me. You had
Yes, yes.
Rajdeep Sardesai, you had Shweta Singh. I mean, which other institute will have,
Yes.
journalists real time coming and giving you a crash course?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
highly. In fact, we don't even meet people just like that.
Yes,
So
yes.
through ITMI, you get to interact with a lot of us who are doing well. Not speaking for myself, but certainly my peers like Rajdeep and Shweta Singh and a lot more. All the India Today, Aaj Tak journalists are literally stars.
Yes,
They're the
yes.
best. In fact, I'll definitely say that India Today, Aaj Tak has the best anchors in the country. So
For sure.
if you are working, interacting and learning from the best in the industry, then what else could be the better USP?
So, ma'am, your graph, as we see that it's like always upwards.
Really?
Yes,
Why
because
do you say that?
like belonging from being such a children who's such a child who's naughty and not so much into academics. Because anchors and journalists, specifically anchors, they are perceived and Mr. and Miss Know It All. They know everything. Because they need to read everything and they have to be updated about the current scenario out there. So, what is the golden mantra that you had learned in these years, and what is that one crucial lesson that you would like to share?
I think my only crucial lesson, I don't know if it's I think the lesson is that you learn on the, like you absorb what you see, right? It's not like I come with a playbook that this is the mantra and this is what I'll follow. I came with a assumption that that I will be, at the forefront of everything. I want to be the star. I want to be visible. I want to be, at the lead anchor. But life does not give you everything that you want. It's given me a lot what I want, but at the same time, I think I did not get a lot that I thought I should deserve. But that's fine. It's made me a lot more humble. And at the same time, it's made me learn from others, which I never did in the past. I used to feel that maybe, why do I need to learn from them? I can do it myself, or I'm better. It's fine. But now, as I'm maturing in the industry, and I think it comes with age. As I'm growing older, I think I feel now I've started to learn from people, take inspiration from them, and do it genuinely. It's not like, I'm doing it for any other reason. It's just that I feel I should be open to suggestions. I should be, because it's very easy to get carried away in the initial years of success.
Yes.
When you're doing well and people are saying, "Oh wow, you're doing very well," and then you close yourself to everything else and you think you're the best. That doesn't work. I think I've now learned to draw inspiration from everyone around me, including both of you. I honestly, I thought you guys were excellent with your introduction. You all had done so much background check and work into it, which I always tell myself that I should do. But I'm always on the go. I learn on the go. I work on the go. I last minute. Yeah, that's just me. May have worked for me, may not work for everyone, but I should discipline myself more. Another thing that I've learned is I need to discipline myself. I need to prioritize what's important, what's not. Earlier I should take up everything, wanting to do everything. Now I've realized that I need to say no to the things I can't do at that point, and only take up things that I can do. So prioritizing is something that I've learned. Drawing inspiration from other people, anybody, small or big, is what I've learned. And and being more self-aware. I think when you're younger, you're very brash and you're just, you're closed to reality. But as you grow older, which I'm sure age will bring you, you start becoming more rooted to reality. So I think
Open to acceptance.
I now realize I'm not the only star. There are so many others. I now know that I can't. It's not my way or the highway every time. I have to accept other people's opinions. So I've started to. I'm on that course now of
Open to acceptance.
Yes. Okay.
accepting my situation now. I'm always striving to be better, but more accepting of my situation. Earlier, I'd be very gutted and upset if things don't go my way. But now I'm taking it slightly more in my spirit.
Okay. So thank you so much, ma'am, for such an insightful conversation. So now we have something different. So
Dance?
no, not definitely. So the thing is, we have a few abbreviations, and now
Oh, is this Gen Z abbreviation?
yes.
You
So
need
now
to decode that.
Oof.
Yes. So
I'm such a boomer, man. I just feel so old when you guys do this to me.
ma'am, this as you know that this is the era where we are like more indulged into social media
I know.
and all. So we are just gonna
Also,
try
you
it.
are the best digital anchor.
Yes.
Really?
So that's why we need to go for this.
Okay.
Yes.
So the first one is GRWM.
Oh God, I have no idea.
But you must be
You
knowing
You
that.
must
You
be
just
knowing
can't-
it.
Yeah.
It is a very famous tag in social media.
GRWM. No way, I can't think of it.
Fashion influencers use this.
Yes.
Very well. MUA fashion.
Yes.
Swear. I mean, and you're calling me a best digital anchor. I mean, yeah, I got an award for it, but still, I can't think of what GRWM is.
Okay, so it's get ready with me.
Oof.
Yeah.
IDK.
Just please, I don't know.
Yes.
Okay.
Great. OOTD.
Over the top.
No.
What's over?
Again, it's related to fashion.
Yes. OOTD.
OOTD. Something with dressed.
Yes.
Too dressed.
No.
No.
Okay. No, I don't know.
It's
Outfit of the day.
Oh, right. I think I knew that and I forgot.
yeah.
FOMO.
Yeah, okay. Feeling of missing out.
Fear of.
Oh, yeah, fear
Fear
of
of
missing
missing
out,
out.
whatever.
Okay. TTYL.
Talk to you later.
Right.
Oh, thank God I'm somewhere close.
TBH.
To be honest,
Okay. YOLO.
you live only once. My life mantra.
LOL.
Laughing out loud.
Okay. TNTL.
That's like my millennial stuff you're asking me. What's
But
that?
it's still used.
Yes.
Okay. It's TNTL.
TNTL.
Yes.
Mm-mm.
Trying not to laugh.
Okay.
YNK.
You know,
You're really close.
Yeah, very close.
you. I don't know.
You never know.
You never know.
Yeah. And the last one, NB.
NB.
Yes.
I know what NM is. What's NB?
Shall we?
Yeah.
Not bad.
Not bad.
That's already a small word. Like, what is the point in making it shorter than what it is? Why?
Again, Gen Z.
Gen Z is like always out of the box.
Yes.
Oh my God. For that little one, I had to work my brain.
So, ma'am, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
sharing such a wonderful experiences with us, and we are really honored to have you here.
Thank you.
And
Me too.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So that's all for today. Stay tuned with us with ITMI TV for another session with another expert.